to talk about mentorship. It's so much a part of my journey as a creative. I've got a lot to say. So I'm going to, I think we're at the end of the presentation. I'll just flip back here actually. With hands, we can answer the following. How many of you would say you've had a mentor in your career? Okay, most of you. Most if not, yeah, majority of you by far. Keep your arm raised if those within a defined mentor-mentee relationship. One where you maybe use those words. Okay, less of you. I think we have corners in my creative life. That was my hope or dream at least. Think of people like Massimo Vignelli, a famous. I learned from them specifically, and then hopefully a lesson for each of you that they could teach all of us. So starting with the early years, as mentioned, I'm a graphic designer and illustrator. When I graduated from design school, I knew the least I would ever know and needed someone to take a chance on me. I think for a lot of young designers, when you're looking for that first job, it's sort of a call to be mentored. There's an expectation that we don't know much and that someone who hires us is going to have to mentor us and like take on that challenge. And Andrew was my first real professional mentor. He taught me briefly in design school, but he owned a one-person boutique branding studio that he recently just left the agency world to start, and he offered me a 2-month internship. Now, I said no to an agency full-time position to take this internship, which may sound kind of crazy, but if you knew Andrew, you know why I did it. He was a big leader in Edmonton's design scene, a very creative, well-respected person, and ultimately, like, while incredibly talented, very humble, which was really remarkable. When I worked with him, I really got to learn how he presents brands to clients. You know, we worked from his small little office within a shared co-working space, and I learned how he sends quotes to clients, how he manages client expectations. For those of you that are graphic designers, Andrew presents one brand direction to clients, which is something that's not often done, and it's kind of a gutsy move, but I got to see how he was able to do that successfully, and he really shepherded me along the process. The lesson Andrew taught me that was really important at this very early step in my career is that working for yourself was viable, because I saw how he left his agency job and was able to sustain a creative life rather than immediately diving into the full-time job. It all worked out in the end. There was a period of unemployment I'm not going to talk about. But again, in the rearview mirror, those lessons I had, that relationship with Andrew was really foundational, and I continue to send him my work to this day, and he shares what he's working on, and I'm really appreciative of that. So that's sort of the last workplace mentor I'm going to talk about this morning. The rest all come from outside the workplace. And I was talking with a peer in preparation for this about if we believe that workplace mentors are possible, which of course they are, but one of the things I feel about mentorship is from the mentee, it takes a certain level of vulnerability in being able to share where you're at and what you're truly struggling with. In jobs, at least as a graphic designer, it feels we need to always be our most confident to sell our skills, to be viable for that promotion or next step up, and showing vulnerability sometimes doesn't feel possible. I think I've had a lot of jobs where I've had so many questions, both technical and soft skills, but I've not felt comfortable to ask for fear of judgment. When you have a mentor outside of the workplace, those barriers kind of can come down, and I can feel more transparent with what I really need help with, and they can meet me there. So that brings me to the lucky match. My next mentor was Laura Stein, who some of you in the room may know. She's quite prolific in the design scene here in Toronto. She's now the Chief Creative Officer at Bruce Mao, and I found her through the RGD mentorship program. The RGD is the Association of Registered Graphic Designers. Nicola's going to talk about them later. You can give away if I didn't tell you I was going to do this. I think you're going to come up on stage later. I'm not being paid to promote this. But what I really loved about the RGD, they do conferences and networking events and workshops, but they also do structured mentorship. This was they did the hard part for me, which is establishing that connection. I wasn't gonna email someone and be like, hey, can you be my mentor? I was really bad at that cold call emailing. So what this was is it had like about 15 willing volunteers who you knew were volunteering their time to mentor someone, and then mentees would apply and they would match you with one of the mentors. And that was most of the structure of the program. The rest was really on the mentee to kind of organize. You could have about 1 hour sessions 6 times over like a period of once a month is how I work with Laura. And what's funny about this is, you know, I knew she'd done some major projects, but I don't think I realized how prolific she was and how lucky I was to have her as like in the first year of my working life, because I was kind of, I cringed now, I was asking her questions like, what's an art director? What do you expect from the designers that you lead? And then a lot of it was also like rants about initial things that had happened in that first year of work and be like, am I crazy? And you know, she had decades of experience, but she was very humble again and met me where I was at, and every question felt valid, and she gave a really like succinct, insightful answer to meet those initial hurdles I was coming. Because again, she was way out on the road ahead of me and could see that, you know, these stresses I had were not anything to worry about in the long term, and that I was going to be fine. Also in this time, I think we talked a lot about from leaders in design that I really appreciate having her as a sounding board for. So the lesson Laura taught me is that experience quells worry. The experience she had, but her sharing that with me really made that first tumultuous year of working a lot more manageable, really. And then I think the lesson here for each of us is that we all sort of need that judgment-free place to be able to, yes. So I had such a good experience with that mentorship program. I remember emailing RGD and being like, can I do this again? This was great. This was really worth my money. They're like, sure, if not enough people apply. And I don't think enough people applied because I got matched again with Chad Roberts. Chad was also in Toronto. He owns Chad Roberts from the city. And super lush, and you knew anything coming out of his mouth was the truth. And so I remember he told me the hard truth was I was at a bit of a fork in the road in my creative career. He saw the side of me that was very illustrative and always liked to incorporate that into design. And then he saw the part of me that was still trying to fit into the like super edgy, cool, wears black and white, knows how to use Helvetica in a sexy way type of designer, which I was not. I was trying to cosplay as that, but he's like, you really have to make a choice and embrace the choice that you make. Following the type of work I was making, embrace that illustrative, exuberant, promote the type of work you like doing. Again, blending design and illustration, and always with a little bit of reference to the past and to history. And I'm really glad she gave me that confidence to do it, because I continue to do this project to this day. It's one of the only like annual consistent things that I have in my creative practice that I look forward to. It's always a blend of pop culture and politics. I think this last year I drew Trump like 5 times. One of the reasons this hit so hard is that I knew that they weren't wrong, right? But I also knew to remember what Chad had said. And I think having multiple mentors, we're better able to sift through the perspectives. All those perspectives are helpful, but I really need to remember, okay, Chad had told me I had something viable here. Not everyone may agree, or it might not be for everyone, but I'm not going to be for everyone. So remembering what Chad said was helpful in getting me out of the rut or the loss of confidence of this mentorship. I was asking questions more about my business and how he's, structures proposals or quotes. He taught me that it's helpful to send multiple quotes or multiple options within a quote to meet different budget needs and more potential for a client to be more available. Telling a recent graduate that they can always ask you for coffee if they ever need to talk about their career. Opening up free 20-minute portfolio reviews, or creating an open call for mentees. I've seen designers do each of these, designers that I know in my network, and I'm really grateful that they put themselves out there in this way, and I wonder how each of us might do that. That's everything for me. Thanks so much for listening. If you want to chat more, here's how you can find me.